Hi guys, welcome back to my YouTube channel. In today's tutorial, we are going to be learning how to make a monostrap top. For this top, I made use of 1.5 yards. For a plus size person, you should make use of 2 yards. So let's get started. I folded this fabric into two, and this will be used for the front piece of the blouse. The first step is to rule the shoulder line. I placed the measuring tape on the shoulder line to mark the neck width, which is 3.5 inches. For a plus size person, you should mark 4 inches. And for the neck depth, I marked 4 inches. For a plus size person, you should mark 5 inches. Now I connected the neck depth to the neck width to form a curved neckline. The next step is to mark the shoulder measurement. My shoulder measurement is 14 inches. I divided it by 2 and I had 7 inches. So I added extra half-inch allowance to that, which made it 7.5 inches. Now below this point, I would mark 1 inch to connect the point to the neck width. And this would be the shoulder slope. To get the chest line, I divided my bust circumference into 4 and I added extra 1.5 inches. That gave me 7.5 inches. Now I placed my tape on the tip of the shoulder slope to mark 7.5 inches, then connected the 2 points together. And this new line is called the armhole line. Now I went ahead to rule a line across this point. So this line would be called the chest line. Now I placed my tape from the shoulder to mark the waistline. My waistline is 15 inches. And the full length of my top is 21 inches. So I added extra 1 inch allowance to the hem, which made it 22 inches altogether. On the chest line, I placed my bust circumference divided by 4. And I added 2 inches sewing allowance by the side. On the waistline, I placed my waist circumference divided by 4. And I added 1 inch for the waist dart and added the actual sewing allowance, which is 2 inches. I connected the waist circumference to the bust circumference. On the hem line, I placed my hip circumference divided by 4 and I added 2 inches sewing allowance by the side to connect the point to the waist circumference as shown. At the edge of the top on this side, I would make a little curve to eliminate the sharp edges around this region. The next step is to add half-inch sewing allowance to the top of the shoulder slope. Now I went ahead to cut out the neckline. It was at this point I realized I haven't marked the armhole curve. So to do this, I placed my measuring tape on the armhole line to mark the midpoint by folding the tape into two. The next step is to connect the midpoint of the armhole line to the chest line in form of a curve. Now I'll go ahead to trim out the excess fabric at the edges of the front piece. So this is all for the front piece. Now for the back piece, I folded my actual fabric into two. I placed the front piece directly on the actual fabric to make sure that I left a 2 inches zipper allowance from the center fold of the back piece. So basically, I would be cutting out exactly the same neckline for the back piece. The only difference here is that I extended the neckline to the zipper allowance. Now I went ahead to trim out the sides. The next step is to shape the zipper allowance so I can have a proper fitting at the center back of my top. So on the top of the neckline, I marked 1.5 inches, and on the waistline here, I marked 1 inch, and for the M line, I marked 1.5 inches to connect the 3 points together. Now I have been able to cut out both the front piece and the back piece of this blouse. The next step is on how to make the monostrap. Now to do this, first of all, I'm going to mark my exact zipper allowance. The next step is to pin the back piece together directly on the zipper allowance line. So this is just the front piece of the blouse. Now on the midpoint of the armhole, I placed my tape inward to mark 1/2 inch and then connect that midpoint to the tip of the shoulder slope, and also connected the midpoint to the end of the armhole curve. Now I'll go ahead to trim out. So this is the back piece of the blouse, and remember I pinned the zipper allowance together. Now I'm going to spread out the back piece. To place the wrong side of the front piece directly on the wrong side of the back piece. The next step is on how to make the mono strap. So recall that I added 2 inches sewing allowance to the sides of this blouse. So from this side, I'll be taking out 2 inches, which is the sewing allowance on this side. Now from this point I marked, I would place my tape in a standing position upward to mark 3 inches. For a plus size spacing, you should mark 4 inches. Now I'm going to connect this new point to the neckline using my curved ruler. So this is how easy it is to make the mono strap. From this side of the armhole, you'd notice that the back armhole is larger, so I'm going to trim it out to make the armhole equal. Alright, so I'll take out the front piece so I can easily trim out the excess fabric on the top of the zipper allowance. So I'm going to fold the back piece into 2 equally and then trim out this excess piece. So this is how easy it is to achieve a monostrap neckline. Now I'll go ahead to place these pieces on my lining to cut out exactly the same shape. So this is the lining for the front piece. The only difference is that the lining is 1 inch shorter than the actual fabric. So I placed the lining on the right side of the front piece to stitch the neckline by 1/2 inch following the direction of the chalk. For the back piece of the blouse, I placed the lining, making sure that it's 1 inch shorter than the actual fabric, and I took this to the sewing machine to stitch the neckline by 1/2 inch following the direction of the chalk. And for the other side of the back piece, I also made sure that the lining is 1 inch shorter than the actual fabric, and here you would notice that the neckline for this other side of the back piece is slanted. So I took this to the sewing machine to stitch the neckline by 1/2 inch following the direction of the chalk. After stitching the neckline, I went ahead to notch the seam allowance, and then I took this to the sewing machine to top stitch on the edges of the lining, and I did the same for the other pieces. After top stitching, I adjusted the hem of the lining to fit in with the hem of the actual fabric to stitch the hem together by 1/2 inch. On this side of the back piece, I would also adjust the hem of the lining to fit the hem of the actual fabric, then stitch the hem by ½ inch. And for this other side of the back piece, I would also adjust the hem of the lining to fit the hem of the actual fabric and then stitch by ½ inch. The next step is to adjust the sides together to stitch by ½ inch. But because I deducted 1 inch from the length of my lining, you would notice that the lining dragged the Ankara upward a little bit. So make sure you do the same. Now on this other side, I would also stitch by ½ inch as well. So this is one side of the back piece, and I'll stitch the edges of the sides by ½ inch. And for the second side of the back piece, I stitch the edges by ½ inch. After stitching, the next step is to turn the pieces of the blouse to the right side of the fabric. After turning all the pieces to the right side of the fabric, I took it to the ironing board to iron the pieces properly. After ironing, the next step is to mark the waist dart. So I folded the front piece into two. To get the waist dart, I divided my nipple to nipple distance by 2, which gave me 3 inches. So I added extra ½ inch sewing allowance, and that is 3½ inches altogether. Now I placed my tip from the center of the fold to mark 3½ inches using dotted lines. To mark the length of the waist dart, I placed my tape from the shoulder vertically downwards, and then my nipple point is 9½ inches. But I don't want the dart to start directly on my nipple point, so I decided to add extra 1½ inches to that, which made it 11 inches. Now I would mark the length of the dart. To do this, since my waistline is 15 inches, I added extra 2 inches, which made it 17. Then I connected both points together. So I'm going to use this dart as a reference to mark the second dart. Now I took the front piece to the sewing machine to secure the darts by ½ inch. Now I placed the back piece of the blouse on each other. To mark the waist dart, I will take out the zipper allowance first. Since my nipple to nipple distance divided by 2 is 3 inches, I added extra ½ inch, which made it 3½. From the zipper allowance, I marked 3½ inches using dotted lines. Now from the shoulder, I marked 8 inches directly on the dotted line. While the length is on 17 inches, just the way it was for the front piece. Now I connected both points together, then used this dart as a reference in making the second dart for the other side of the back piece. I took the back piece to the sewing machine to stitch the dart by ½ inch. After I stitched the dart on the back piece, the next thing I did was to attach a zipper to the zipper allowance. After attaching the zipper, I went ahead to cut out the excess zipper at the top, which I then folded inward. Then took this to the sewing machine to stitch. So the back piece of the blouse is ready. Now I place the front piece directly on the back piece, making sure that the sides are equal. Now I'll go ahead to place my bust circumference divided by 2. And on the waistline, I would place my waist circumference divided by 2. And at the bottom, I'll be placing my hip circumference divided by 2. to connect the 3 points together. I took the blouse to the sewing machine to stitch the sides following the direction of the chalk. To secure the shoulders together, I made sure that the Ankara was facing each other and the lining was facing each other as well. Then took this to the sewing machine to stitch the shoulders by ½ inch. So this is a straight sleeve and I'm going to be using this as a template in making the puff sleeve. So what I'm going to do here is to splash the sleeve, keeping a distance of 1 inch away from each other. Now I went ahead to label each sections from 1 to 6. Now to spread out these labeled parts, I'm going to fold my fabric into two. Then from the center of the fold, I'll be placing the first section. And I'll be using the length of the first section as a guide in placing the rest of the template. Now from the first section, I kept a distance of 1 inch and went ahead to place the second part. So you can see that it's actually resting on the straight line as well. Now I went ahead to mark 1 inch distance again from the second part to place the third part. And then I kept marking 1 inch distance to place the rest of the paper. After spreading out the papers, I went ahead to pin the papers to the fabric, then also traced out the top of the sleeve. The next step is to mark my desired sleeve length. I want my sleeve length to be on 15 inches. Now I went ahead to add extra 2 inches sewing allowance to the hem, which made it 17 inches altogether. Now I would take the measurement of the sleeve opening on this line, which is 13 inches. Then I'll place these 13 inches directly on the hem to connect these points together. So this is all for this full sleeve. Since the second sleeve is an off-shoulder sleeve, I would place my tape from the top of this sleeve to subtract 4 inches for the off-shoulder. Now I'm going to fold the top of the sleeve from this first line, so I can use this as a template in cutting out the off-shoulder sleeve. So this is my actual fabric and I folded it into two. The next step is to place the sleeve directly on this folded fabric to cut out exactly the same shape. For the off-shoulder sleeve, I'll be inserting an elastic band into the top of the sleeve. So because of this, I would mark 1 inch away from the top of the sleeve and then assume that it's been folded by 1 inch. Now I'm going to go ahead to place this off-shoulder side of the armhole to cut out exactly the same shape. Now I'm going to secure the top of the sleeve in such a way that a ½ inch elastic band can be inserted into the fold. And I would also secure the bottom of the sleeve in such a way that a half-inch elastic band can be inserted into the fold as well. So this is a full sleeve. I would be securing the hem of the sleeve by 1 inch in such a way that a half-inch elastic band can be inserted into the fold. So this is my sleeve, and when my sleeve length is on 15 inches, my round sleeve on my body measurement is on 9 inches. So I'm going to make sure that the length of the elastic is also 9 inches as well. Now I'll go ahead to insert the elastic into the bottom of the sleeve. After inserting the elastic, I folded the sleeve into two. Then I took the sleeve to the sewing machine to stitch the side of the sleeve by ½ inch. Now for the off-shoulder sleeve, I would cut an elastic band of 9 inches long as well to insert it into the bottom of the sleeve. After I inserted the elastic, I folded the sleeve into two equally. Then I took the sleeve to the sewing machine to stitch the sides of the sleeve by ½ inch. Right, so I'm going to turn the sleeves to the right side of the fabric. And the next step is to insert an elastic band on the top of the sleeve on this side. For a small size person, the elastic length I need is 10 inches. But if you're a plus size person, you should use an elastic length of 12 inches. Now I'll go ahead to insert this elastic into the elastic casing at the top of the sleeve. The final step is to attach the sleeves to the armhole of the blouse. So for the off shoulder sleeve here, I'm going to attach it to the armhole by ½ inch. For the full sleeve, I'll be gathering the armhole by ½ inch to attach it to the armhole of the blouse on this side. Alright guys, so this is the final outcome of the blouse. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you are new to my channel, my name is Nancy. Kindly subscribe, share and like my videos, and also put on your notification bell so you'll be the first to be notified when I upload new tutorials. Bye for now.